Hi everyone. So thanks for joining our careers webinar. Um, if you're on this webinar, hopefully you're interested in either moving out to Australia to work as a doctor in the next year or the near future, or you just want to find out a bit more about pursuing medical careers abroad and are interested in trying something new. So I'm joined with a couple of different people. So I've got myself, I'm a junior doctor who moved out to Australia last year. I also have one of my other colleagues who's also called Chloe. She's also a junior doctor who's made the move to Melbourne last year. I'm also joined by the team from Skilled Medical. So they're a recruitment agency who recruit doctors across Australia, New Zealand, and the UK. So we have Susie, Will, Harry, and from the recruitment team here. They're going to be hoping to answer some questions and speak a bit about their role in the process and answer some of your guys' frequently asked questions. If there's any problems at any point where you can't see the slides or something doesn't make sense and you have questions, just feel free to write them in the chat and we will get to them at the end or address them as we go along. So we'll just make a start. So if you're joining this chat, you're probably considering like a change in career and thinking about moving abroad. So there's loads of reasons why you might want to move abroad and try something new. Moving to Australia, personally for me, I wanted to delay like making a decision about what to do next. So like after finishing medical school and getting through foundation, nearing the end of F2, not having like a next step, after having all of that structured education time and following through all the rotations, not knowing what to do next was a bit of like a daunting thought. So a lot of people, and it's very popular to move to Australia to do like an F3 year. I actually hadn't never really considered that that would be something I would be interested in. I always thought I would want to move directly onto specialty training, but when the actual time had come around, that didn't really, wasn't really like an interest to me at that point. So I think delaying further training, like taking more time to work and like develop your basic medical skills is quite like an important reason why people do F3. Um, Alongside that is obviously the opportunity to travel. Since I've been out here in Australia, I've been on like probably 5 times more holidays than I would normally in a year because there's just so much to do in Australia. And obviously you're being on this side of the world, everything that I would want to visit and all these like amazing countries is a lot more feasible and it's like a lot closer to visit. So I've been to like the Philippines and been to Indonesia and stuff from here, which I probably would be like a once in a couple of years holiday from the UK. The weather's been amazing. Even like Melbourne winter has been pretty tame and it's getting back into like peak summertime now. So the weather's been amazing. I think most people, when they think of Australia, are thinking that they will get better pay. So I think I would agree with that. I get better pay now in my current job compared to what I was getting in the UK. And I think probably the work-life balance has been a lot better. You have a lot more opportunity to try like new things that you might be interested in. So I've been like scuba diving, you might try surfing. There's the outback. There's so many places that you might want to visit. And then there's obviously all the amazing and like famous Australian wildlife that you might be lucky enough to spot. So I think when you're thinking about the process of making a move, most people want to know like how they could do it. Um, so there's two main ways. One of them would be like independently doing it. So just you finding a job and you completing the process yourself. That's how I personally done it. I didn't actually really know any other way when I'd done it. I just assumed that was what everyone had to do. But there's a lot of recruitment agencies there that can help you now. So obviously, we're joined by Skilled Medical. They will speak a bit to you about what they can do to help you and like how the process usually goes. But obviously, through an agency, they will help you with more of the like nitty gritty paperwork and stuff. Um, my personal experience was pretty time consuming but straightforward. I personally was like sent a job by a friend. They had applied for a job through the Health Board Monash, that's a health board in Victoria, um, through their just official website. She basically sent me a job, like posting, I guess, of like an emergency department job for a year. So I applied directly for that just because like my friend was actually doing a similar post. That was sort of the extent of my actual job search. I found that, applied online, just like an online questionnaire, uploaded CV, cover letter, some references. Quite quickly after, had heard back to do an online or like a recorded interview. Um, that was just a series of questions that you recorded yourself answering and then uploaded. Quite quickly after I'd heard back, so sort of like ceased the job hunt there and didn't really venture any further into looking past Victoria. Um, Once the job was secured, the paperwork sort of followed for several months, and that was ongoing until the point of actually moving out, to be honest. Um, the health check was probably the last thing I done prior to securing my visa, and a week later booking my flights to and flying out then a few days later to Australia. So the process was quite lengthy and took me the guts of December to June getting a job and filling all the paperwork in. That was probably largely related to like organizing, doing it while working. Took me just probably longer than it needed to fill everything in. Um, Once you actually got out, I completed like some online training induction and then sorted actually like living here prior to start working. Um, my feelings now looking back on it was there's actually quite a lot of jobs out there. I think I thought there would be a lot of people applying for a little amount of jobs, but in reality, there's tons of jobs. And depending on how like picky you are of where you go and like what exactly you do, I guess. But there's loads of jobs, and they're looking to recruit people to come. So I think there's plenty of options and plenty to pick from. Um, the paperwork personally for me was the worst part. Being like organized to do that and filling it in. It's helpful if you have someone that you can do it alongside, or obviously if you're going through someone who is able to help you. The admin at my hospital did help a bit, but it was very like infrequent and very like vague, and there was multiple issues with that. I think they're helping such a large volume of people alongside other stuff that it can be a bit of a problem. There's a bit of an adjustment period. I personally felt like it took half a year to feel settled in the city or like Australia itself, just because you're so far away from home, and the time difference is quite a lot. So I think feeling settled took me quite a while. It's helpful if you know people coming out because that was obviously makes the transition a lot easier. But there is quite a lot of IMGs, so there's probably quite a big like community of people that are in the same situation as you. Um, I've had like a really positive experience overall, so that's why I'm staying out here for another couple of FY4, 5. We'll see how that goes. Um,
Great.
next part is, so I'll upload these slides to Medal so you can have a look, or to the Mind the Bleep page after, for people that are wanting to apply. These are just things that I think you need when you're starting to apply through the process. So that'll be like some of your documents that you need, proof of address. Start asking consultants that you work with, that you get along with, to be your reference, so that you have some when you start applying for jobs. And you might want to start like hunting down your vaccination history from occupational health, GP, that. And I'll leave these up at the end for people as well. These are, this is for Victoria, the top few, but I think if you're wanting to like browse the medical careers, if you go through the government site for each sort of like area, there'll be a bit more about what jobs they have available. So I think Chloe wanted to speak a bit about like how she went through the process, so she'll do that, and then she'll hand over to Skilled Medical.
Hi, yeah, I'm just going to speak about the actual step-by-step process in a bit more detail and touch on the costs of each stage that we went through. So obviously step one, as Chloe said, is securing a job, whether that be you do it yourself or go through an agency. The things you should think about before applying to a job is obviously, where do you actually want to live and where would you actually want to work? I think me and Chloe got very trigger happy and we got sent one job and we applied for it, and then we're like, oh, we'll just do that. But it would be good to like browse about, think about where you'd actually like to live and what parts of Australia you'd actually like to see. Another thing to consider is what grade you're going to apply for. So if you're finishing FY2 and you're doing an FY3, you'll most commonly be looking for jobs that are called hospital medical officer or resident medical officer, and that's for people who are postgraduate year 2 or year 3. And then you could also apply for unaccredited junior registrar jobs, which is most commonly people who are postgraduate year 3 and 4, and that's more for people that potentially have like a specific interest and you already know what career path you want to go down and you want to get more experience in that area before applying for full training. I think most commonly when you hear about like your friends or like colleagues from the years above you coming out to work in Australia, it's always that they've done an ED year, but there is a lot more jobs than an ED year. Obviously, if you're interested in ED, then that's great, but there is other jobs out there for people who have other interests. So you can do like surgical years and rotate through different surgical specialties. You can do critical care years that give you ED and ICU and anaesthetics, and then you can just do general years which cover like the medical specialties. So there is a lot of options out there that's good to look at. Another thing to consider is your rota and what hours you're going to be working. I think in the UK we were working such heavy hours week on week, but most jobs here you work 76 hours in a fortnight, which usually looks like either 1 week on, 1 week off, or you'll just be working kind of your standard 36 hours a week, and it's pretty consistent. You don't ever really do overtime, which is good. And yeah, just like I said, just I think definitely go to where you would want to live and want to see. Yeah. And then step 2, once you've actually secured a job, the first thing you need to do is to apply to the Australian Medical Council, which is kind of similar to the GMC, and apply to Epic, which is an online portal where they verify that you actually are a doctor and have a medical degree, and you do that over webcam. So I've just put the cost up there. It roughly costs about £300 to register with the AMC, and then about £55 to do your Epic degree verification. And then once you do that, you can go on to your next step. Step 3 is registering with APRA, which is the regulatory body that you register to be able to actually practice as a medical practitioner in Australia. There's different pathways to which you can register as a medical practitioner. So we went down the competent authority pathway. That's if you've graduated from a UK medical school, then you'll be eligible for that pathway. If you've not graduated for a UK medical school, then you might have to go down the standard pathway, which consists of clinical and MCQ exams, but most people go down the competent authority pathway if they've studied in the UK or Ireland. This costs roughly about £370 to do, and you do need to have a police check, an international police check, which is fit to work, to be able to apply. And you also have to have your passport and degree, and pretty much just your passport and degree. I also got my GMC registration notarized by Notary Public for them to then register you on a provisional registration. And then once you've done all that and you're able to actually be on the register and practice, then you can think about your visa. So your visa should be guided by your employer because they will have to sponsor you. The most common visas that we've seen and heard of is the 407 visa, which is a training visa, and then the 482 visa, which is a skill shortage visa. They both have different kind of pros and cons. And it just kind of depends on your employer, what they want to put you through. So me and Chloe are on a 407 visa with our work, which is for 2 years. But if we leave our jobs that we're in, then it will be terminated. So we'll have to think about getting a different visa after that. Whereas I think commonly in the skill shortage visa, even if you leave your work, you can still keep your visa. The visas usually are for 2 years, and your employer should guide you through that. Your employer will have to start the application for you because they obviously have to sponsor you, and then you kind of complete your part through the immigration website. To be able to actually get your visa, you have to have a health check, and you can get your health check. It needs to be by an approved clinic from the immigration. So you can find where the approved clinics are on the immigration website. If you're wanting to work as a medical practitioner, you need to have had like bloodborne virus screen, chest x-ray, and just a medical checkup. And then once that's sent off, it's kind of just a waiting game to get your visa, and then you can actually book your flights. Definitely don't book your flights before your visa's been approved, because I've heard of many scare stories of people going to their health check and then immediately booking their flight, and then it actually takes weeks to come back. So just be mindful that you should probably have your visa before you book flights, just in case you can't make them. Obviously, flights are going to vary in cost. And then once you're actually out here, you have to think about where you're going to stay in the short term and the long term. So once you're out here, you might want to spend some time looking for where you want to actually live, and you'll need to get somewhere to live while you're actually looking for a more permanent accommodation. So whether that be staying with a friend or booking through Airbnb or getting a sublet while there's lots of sites online like fairy floss where you can find people who are maybe going traveling or going on holiday and they want to rent out their room for a period of time. So you can always look on there for like a short-term lease while you're looking for more permanent accommodation. The other thing you need to think about cost-wise is how are you actually going to get to and from work. Australia's a lot bigger than the UK, and it is definitely sometimes a lot longer travel time than you would expect to get to your job. So you might need a car. So that's another expense to consider. And then once you're out here, you need to just think about, you know, getting a SIM card, opening a bank account, and that sort of thing as well. And then we've just kind of put up an estimate of like the cost before taking into consideration flights, accommodation, and
please make call adult minus
sorry.
medical centre ward 32 haematology red team. Make call adult minus medical centre ward 32 haematology red team.
Sorry, if anyone heard that, I'm in work. So yeah, we just put up a cost pre-flights, pre-accommodation of roughly what it would cost. Some of your employers will like reimburse you for your visas or pay part of your visa. So just inquire about that when you're speaking to them. And you also might be eligible for a relocation grant. So just look on the like state government website wherever you're applying to see whether you would be eligible for that. I think the requirements change quite frequently. So just looking near the time would be the best thing to do to see if you're eligible for that. And then, yeah, things just to be aware of that we've already kind of spoken about is it is quite expensive process. And once you add everything up, once you get out here as well, it is a big move to make. Obviously, you're going to be like far away from your family and friends. And I also found that there was like quite a long adjustment period, and I was kind of like, oh, when's this adjustment period going to end? But it definitely does. And then look into the job that you're actually going to be taking, like where it is, what the rota is like, can you get to and from work from where you would want to be living, and do you need a car? And then the other thing to be mindful of is when you do come out here and you apply to work as a medical practitioner with APRA, you have to have a year provisional registration. So you have to do 47 weeks work supervised practice before you can then apply for a full registration, and you can't do casual work or locum work until you have a full registration. So you can't really pick up anything else in that year. And that's it from me. And then we'll just hand it over to Skilled Medical to talk a bit about what they do. Thanks.
Oh, thank you, both of you, Chloe. Hello, everybody. I'm Susie Tobin. I'm with Skilled Medical. We've got a team online with you guys today. We've got Will in the London office and Harry in the Melbourne office. I'm just so impressed, Chloe, both of you, that you've achieved the move on your own. You can see there's so much there to do, many steps in the process. It can take many months to do, and you've highlighted all the expenses that you will incur. Look, the good news is if you felt you didn't have the time to do it on your own, we are an agency that actually will support the process and help you find the job and help you with the process to apply. There's lots of agencies around. The good part about Skilled Medical is we're an Australian company and we've been running for about 20 years, owned and run by a doctor himself, Dr. David Campbell. But we've got the office there in London as well, and we know there's been so much interest from the UK to Australia. So we've got a good team of people that can help provide you information and support the process. Look, Skilled Medical, we've got access to all the jobs. We've got agreements with all the states in Australia. And Chloe Maxwell's right, there are plenty of jobs out there. The reality is they are spread out around the country. And Australia has a real need for rural and regional locations positions. Will can give you some information about how we can help you from the UK side. And Harry can give you some information about once you've been working in Australia and the end of your first year, you do have options if you do want to stay to find locum work or find other positions. And we're here to help you basically from start to end. I just thought of a funny question there about how big are the spiders. Look, the spiders can be the size of your hand, but the dangerous ones are only little, so don't worry about the spiders. And just before I hand over to perhaps Will, I can see lots of questions coming through. I think the Chloes have answered quite a bit, but if we still, if we don't get to every question today, look, our website, we've got the join us or register with us emails. We've got all this information too that we can provide you offline if that helps us out as well. So if you don't get the answers today, we've got most of those answers for you, and we can support you with looking for the jobs and the process. We've got health services in Australia that will support airfares, provide the visa sponsorship, even relocation support with short-term accommodation in Australia. So that's all the information that we can share with you and help you move through the process. So perhaps Will's in the seat in London, and he's been placing, I think, nearly 40 junior doctors just this year alone. So Will, can I perhaps hand to you just for that initial step that these doctors may want to take with contacting us in the London office? And then perhaps after you, Harry might be able to just explain a bit about the process of once you're in Australia and staying on, because it's a really important part of your experience. You've spent some money and time getting to Australia and having a first year of experience, but if you want to stay on, Australia will be very happy to have you, and we'll do all we can to help you stay as well. So I'm Susie, and I'm going to hand over to Will. Thanks, Will.
Thanks, Susie. As Susie mentioned, so I'm over here in the London office. I'm originally from Melbourne, but have been here for probably about 5 years or so. Predominantly working with either UK grads or doctors that have come to the UK, sat PLAB, come to the UK, worked here for a year or more, and then are looking to move to Australia. So obviously, every year's been different. The last couple of years, there's been a big increase in, I guess, both the demand and the hospitals we've been able to work with. Having said that, every year's different. So there'll be some hospitals that will, need our assistance with multiple vacancies one year, and then the next year they're sort of quite well recruited, quite well staffed. So every year is a bit different. So it's always a bit difficult to give someone an exact idea of which hospitals are going to have which vacancies at which time, but generally speaking, we do a lot of work each year, and also in New Zealand. I know this webinar is predominantly focused on Australia, but we do a lot with New Zealand hospitals as well. As Susie said, I'd say that the big difference is that we've got a big presence in Australia and have been there for a number of years, and then also have a physical presence here in London. That helps with, as the both Chloes have said, that the time difference is big, and there's often a delay in sort of hearing from people, and sometimes applying for jobs via these sort of state websites, and just not receiving a response. And obviously, if time is precious, time's everything when you're a junior doctor and you're working those long hours. I guess that's the big thing that we can help with is take some of that that effort, that time, and help you look for those jobs, and then once you've got them, help you with the process, because if you're sort of securing a job in December and you're not able to start till June, that's a fair amount of time. So we might also be able to sort of speed things up a bit, giving advice on various forms to fill in and things you can do ahead of time, police checks, all that sort of thing, making sure the forms are filled in, the way that APRA or the AMC want them, and getting it all through a bit quicker as well. I guess that's what we do. And the second thing is, I guess, to try and give a bit of advice as well. As I said, I'm from Melbourne, so I feel I know the sort of that part of the country pretty well. But we've also been doing this for so long that we've had some really good feedback from a number of doctors that have gone to other parts, some that have gone to places that they never would have really have heard of or sort of maybe thought of initially. And then once they've got there, they've realised, that they're still earning just as well as a doctor in Melbourne or Sydney, but they're paying half as much in accommodation and rent and those sorts of things, and they've got so much more disposable income. And sometimes the hospitals as well are so much more accommodating and keen to sort of attract and retain their staff. So yeah, there's been people have had a great experience and going to a variety of locations. Not so much probably the outback, not so much the middle of nowhere locations, but definitely those big regional centres and coastal cities that are, as Susie said, are crying out for good, well-trained doctors, I guess.
I just saw a question there, if I could jump in. Using a medical recruitment company like Skilled Medical doesn't cost the doctor any extra. It's just the normal fees that you would pay for your registrations and your health checks and things. But our service to you is free, if that was of concern. I just saw a question pop up.
Yeah, that's something that we get asked a lot, and as we've already been discussed, there are some pretty big initial costs there. Obviously, paying for your first year's registration with APRA, your application fee, the visa fee is considerable. I think as well as that, I mean, it's not a cost to you as the doctor, but I think the hospital's paying about $4,000 to nominate you for that visa. So there's a bit of a cost to them for bringing people over from the UK as well. So I guess they want to know that people are keen to come and intend to stay for that full year. As we've said, that sort of provisional year, that first sort of 47 weeks, and then once you move on to general registration, then you get a lot more things really open up, and you've got a lot more flexibility. You can do a lot more things. You've still got that visa requirement, that sponsorship requirement, but yeah, there's a lot more things you can do. And one other thing I would just add as well, to do with maybe the working hours and remuneration and how does it compare to the UK and all that sort of thing. Some feedback that we've received from doctors time after time is just that because you're not doing those unpaid extra hours, week after week, that 76-hour fortnight can be quite a bit less than you were doing in your F1 or F2 year. That you're able to pick up even though you can't locum, you're able to pick up an extra shift at your own hospital every now and then at a good rate, and that can really help to boost your income. So that's something that people have been able to do as well. But yeah, it might be good chance now to hand over to Harry, who's obviously based in our Melbourne office and can perhaps speak about the locum opportunities, the things you can do once you've been there for that 47 weeks and have got your general registration and are thinking about, staying on a bit longer for a second year, maybe even thinking about, applying for permanent residency and then following that training programs, because I'm pretty sure all the colleges in Australia will insist on doctors having PR before they're able to get onto a training program. So yeah, Harry, if you can take over, that'd be great.
Yeah. So I moved over to Australia just about a year and a half ago now from Scotland, with my partner who's also a doctor. And I work in the recruitment side of our Melbourne office and our IMG coordination. So I look after the kind of visa and sponsorship program that we run in Melbourne over here as well. So as the guys were saying, after you have to do the first 47 weeks on the competent authority pathway typically. You'll be on provisional registration, then get your full registration, and then you'll be able to locum thereafter. We service the full of Australia. So I've got a lot of IMGs that like to go on up to Darwin, WA, up to the Sunshine Coast. I saw a lot of questions about people wondering if they can link partners onto their visas. Yes, you can as well with that. There's no extra cost to that. I'm on my partner's visa. and there's no additional cost onto that, and it shouldn't impact the time it takes for the visa to come through. You just have to put a bit more documentation into the visa process. As well as that, a lot of the IMG doctors like to come over in groups with friends, if they can work in similar hospitals together when they come over. People were wondering if they could link applications for hospitals when they come over. I'm not sure if that's something you've had on your end, Will, but I have had friends over here who've come over as partners and have had gone to the same hospitals and got their applications linked up. So it is possible. I'm just not sure how easy it is in the first instance. But yeah, I'm happy to help with any questions you've got on locoming over here or any visa questions you may have after your initial year. But Will's right in the sense that typically you have to be on permanent residency before you go into the specialty training, or have at least applied for permanent residency before you're allowed to progress onto specialty training.
And just as Harry mentioned, yeah, working with couples or people with dependents, all that sort of thing. Yeah, we've had a whole mix of people go over both, couples where they're both medics, couples where one's medical and one's not, but both going over. Obviously, yeah, you can also add children, add dependents to that visa. We've had people go over and do that. Head over, particularly some that are perhaps a bit older, and have got, they're married with children. They've gone over, and that's also been fine. Obviously, if you're going to the big cities, Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane, you're able to both move to that city and work in different hospitals, where perhaps if you're going to one of the smaller centres, you might end up working in the same hospital and, obviously living together as well. But yeah, we've had a full range of people do that. And just because we're kind of focusing on the competent authority pathway, which is doctors with a UK training and UK experience, there's no sort of requirement for doctors to have a British passport. Once again, we've worked with a lot of doctors who have come from overseas, sat PLAB, worked in the UK, and then come from Middle East, from India, Sri Lanka, Pakistan, Malaysia, Southeast Asia, those sorts of places, and they've been sort of grouped in that same competent authority pathway category, and the process has been just as smooth for them as well. So yeah, I guess the only thing with coming with a partner or children is the extra visa cost, obviously per applicant. But yeah, there's no reason why it can't be done. And as I said, we've had a full range of people, with the different backgrounds that have gone over and found the process has worked just as well for them.
In terms of a couple of questions about permanent residency, typically at the moment it's about 3 years with the same employer to be eligible to apply for permanent residency. However, if you were a doctor, the current stipulation they have that's like a caveat to that is if you were a doctor that arrived between February 2020 and December 2021, you're able to apply for PR. I think it's in 2 years, and it doesn't have to be with the same employer. However, the immigration office is wanting to make it a bit more accessible to everyone, and it's been notified by the head of migration for the Australian government that they want to change this at the end of this year, so to make it, I think it's 2 years minimum for people on a 482 visa to be able to apply for a PR of any kind of situation. So that doesn't mean you have to be with the same employer. So for example, you could come over for 1 year with your host hospital, move into a locum agency, and thereafter you'd be able to apply for PR. But you have to be sponsored in that situation by your employer, and they have to be the host sponsor of your 482 visa at that point.
And Australia, like the UK, we've got the doctor shortages, and so Australia is really very open to supporting you guys staying, whether it is the 1 or 2 years or the longer term. So, and the upside of Brexit is Australia and the UK have really started to rebuild the relationship to enable it the exchange of people to work and move between the two countries, and access to visas are kind of evolving and becoming better, particularly where skill shortages exist. So again, we use a visa migration agent to guide us with all of this information. So these are the sort of things that we can provide you with, insight and information, and direct you once you've landed into Australia if you want to continue on. Harry and I were recently in Bendigo and met 4 or 5 junior doctors that had come out from the UK just 5-6 months ago, and a couple of them are looking to plan their permanent residency and training. So, these are young people like yourselves that are wanting to build a life in Australia, and there's pathways to take, and there's great information out there. And if we can help you with that, that's the sort of thing our Melbourne office will do as well.
I see there's a couple, sorry to jump in there, that Ben Walker was mentioning regarding non-medical partners. So that was my situation. Essentially, if you're a de facto partner on a 482 visa, you have unrestricted working rights. So it's kind of the better situation out of the two people on the visa. So you can work for whoever you want on that visa as a de facto partner, and for as long as you want, as long as that visa is kind of existing.
And if anyone has partners as nurses, we're also looking for nurses and placing nurses all around Australia. So, and of course, senior specialist doctors too.
So I think we have some other FAQs that we gathered from registration. If people are able to answer any of these, so we've touched on some of them already. So like linking applications with your partner, we spoke about. Chloe and I actually were both in the same health board by chance, and worked in the same department. We both worked in A&E at the same time, and they were actually really flexible. Like, we asked to link our rosters just as friends, and we pretty much done all the same out of hours. A lot of people that we have like met and know, if you're in the same like trust or hospital, you can like try to get the same department, and people are quite flexible. Like, you can consider linking your rotas if you're like car sharing, or if you want to be off at the same time. So I think that one we touched on. Funding support, I think, dependent on where you're going, and who is employing you. A lot of people have been asking for like advice for people out with the UK at the moment. So Ukraine had come up as one. If anyone has any information about,
I guess all I'd say on that is a bit like I said before. So the main thing for us, or for moving to Australia, is your eligibility for those registration pathways. So whether you've done a degree in the UK, what passport you hold is not really relevant or important, I don't think. And then also for doctors who have come to the UK from other places, done their undergrad somewhere else, and then moved here. So that's a big group of doctors. There is a little bit of an area where we're not as sure, and that's people who have moved to the UK without sitting PLAB, because there are obviously MR Chem, and there's various other things you can do to get your GMC registration if you've come here from overseas. And we're just not, I don't know if there's any doctors that we've worked with yet that have done one of those other routes. But yeah, the group that sit PLAB and come here, that's definitely a group we've got a lot of experience in. And yeah, there's no reason why it's any more difficult than it is for a UK grad. So yeah, the passport you hold's not really a big thing, I wouldn't say.
So I think we'd also touched a bit on the next one that was popular, was like people asking about specialty training in Australia. So I think Will had said, that Harry had said that you need to have PR or be like applying for PR, be eligible for PR to start doing that. I think also a couple of people we'd spoken to had said you might need to be in a certain job, be like in the same job in the emergency department for a period, like 6 months, if you want to apply to emergency training. So it's all dependent on what exactly you're applying for. All the information would be online again, but it's not as straightforward as finishing in the UK and applying to specialty training in Australia. There's obviously, you have to have come out with your provisional registration, get your general registration, be thinking about staying out for longer. Obviously, if they're wanting to recruit you to a specialty post, they want to see that you're like working out here and you're going to continue doing that. I think we've spoken again about the visa process with a family. We've known a couple of people who are coming out next year with like young children and stuff. So I think it's definitely doable. One thing that I'm not familiar with is getting a job straight after FY1. It's come up a couple of times, but I'm not sure if that's something anyone has experience with.
The only thing I'd say about that, I mean, yeah, the competent authority pathways is essentially, you know, do your UK degree and have 12 months of UK experience, you know, do your F1. The only problem with doing it if you wanted to come just after your F1 is because the process is, you know, 3, 4, maybe even 5 months. So if you had started you were just about to finish your F1 and then apply, then you're okay. But if you were sort of 3 or 4 months before finishing your F1, it would be, I don't see how APRA would approve your registration because, you know, at that time of application, you're not going to have 12 months of experience. So I'm just not sure how that would work if you hadn't completed your F1. But yeah, there's no reason why you can't go after F1, but I'm just saying if you wanted to, you know, finish your F1 in August and head over straight away, I just don't know how you'd sort of get that job in, you know, March or April and start the registration process if you hadn't completed your first year. But in terms of that registration pathway, there's no reason why you can't, why you have to have completed your F2. I think the only reason why people tend to do that is because it makes it easier for when they want to return to the UK at a later stage. And I think I saw another question on there about returning to Australia. As long as you've got that general registration, you've stayed there for 47 weeks. Once you've got that general registration, you're able to keep that and yeah, definitely return at a later date. And we know a few doctors that have done that. You know, they've got back to the UK and for whatever reason decided it's not for them and they want to go back to Australia. So that's definitely something you can do. But you do need to make sure you've moved on to general registration. You have stayed that first 12 months.
One thing on the back of that the doctors that want to come back, we've just recently been notified that to make things a lot easier for you guys on visa situations, if you were to have your full registration and wanted to return back to Australia and work as a locum or for an extended period of time for up to a year, you can come over on a working holiday visa and you can work on a working holiday visa if you have your full registration as a locum doctor.
I think the last one we'd already spoken about, Will had already answered about the passports. So let's see. A lot of people have been asking about like health conditions, and I think because there's been mention of health checks, it's come up a couple of times in the chat about like long-term health conditions and what that would mean for you coming over. I think from my personal experience, the health check is quite like, it's not anything too in depth. They basically just want to make sure that you're of a reasonable fit and health to come over and like work at the job you're doing. So like they want to make sure you don't have any like occupational risks and that your health is reasonable. If you have any like long-term health conditions, you should have the information about that and be able to show the medical examiner about that. And if there's anything else they want to like look into, they will consult someone and get back to you on that. But I think it would depend really for when you're out here whether you're eligible for Medicare or not. But the condition of most of the visas is that you hold an adequate level of health insurance. So like the condition of my visa was that I should have health insurance to cover my own health while I'm out here. And even though I was Medicare eligible from being from the UK, it takes a period to get Medicare as well. So you wouldn't immediately have it. So I guess if you don't have Medicare and you have to have health treatment, that would be at like a cost to yourself, or you would take out health insurance. And then obviously your health insurance would be dependent on whatever your personal health situation is, of like the costs for that and what they are able to do for you. So I think it's maybe dependent on everyone's like personal circumstance, but I don't see why, if you have a health condition that is obviously like manageable, would stop you from coming, but it would just dependent on like the cost and how you receive your healthcare while you're over here would be depending on whether you're eligible for Medicare or what your health insurance situation would be. So I think that unless anyone has any particular experience with
No, I
dealing
think
with
that's
like
right. I think the only thing, rightly or wrongly, as harsh as it sounds, they want to know if someone's going to be how much of a cost to the system someone is going to be, and that's why there are, age restrictions and things. So, but like you say, you're going to have private health insurance anyway, which over there is a bit of a different. I mean, over here in the UK, a lot of people that would have private insurance, it's only because of their employer provides it, whereas in Australia, most professional people will have private health insurance. It's not a huge expense. It does cost, but it's not a huge thing. So it is far more common. And as I say, most people with a in a professional job will have it, especially young people. I think they sort of taxes and things they sort of push you towards getting it before the age of 30 and things. So it's a pretty standard thing in Australia for someone to have.
Yeah. And so we've spoke about that. Personally, I don't think there's much like impact on when you want to move, August or January. Like whenever I first came out, I was looking at August, but like it just wasn't really feasible. Like it came around so quickly. It was, even though I started looking for jobs in December because everyone said to start sooner, and I'd had a job offer and all by like early January. I still hadn't cracked on with like half of the paperwork. It was like sort of not progressing as fast as I thought. I wouldn't have definitely managed the move out in August. It was just too quick a turnaround for me. So I had delayed mine initially to September and then to November. And then I wanted to delay it to January, but obviously like the hospital has a job that's sitting unfilled. So they were obviously not too thrilled with that. So I ended up agreeing on November. The terms are kind of like they want you to fit into a term usually. So there's set terms. But the majority of people maybe come out like, yeah, August, February, January time. I think there's jobs sort of like all year round. It doesn't make too much of a difference. And yeah, I think a lot of people think all the jobs are emergency department based, but I think Chloe done a general stream job, so that's like she's doing ICU, done gen med, done geriatrics. I've just done an emergency department year, so it's not been very varied. It depends like what your interests are. The only good thing is it's like consistent, and you don't need to keep moving departments. It depends whether you like the like rolling rotations or you just want to stay somewhere. In terms of someone's asked about like specialties and pay, pay can sometimes be linked to, so you'll have like a standard rate hourly, and then you'll have maybe like extra money for working out of hours. So if you're doing like a night shift, we get 25% more. If you're doing like a Sunday, you'll get more. So if you're doing a lot of out of hours, like it adds up a bit and you'll get paid more money. But a lot of the jobs that are in general rotation might be all night shifts. You can like do medical night shifts. Obviously, you'll be doing night shifts the whole time, so you might get a higher, like a base pay. I think the dates for start tend to vary on the hospital or like what level of job you're going in for. So like the registrars will rotate differently than the HMOs. Someone asked about going from foundation to registrar. The job I done was recruiting like unaccredited, which just means you're not in training, registrars for the emergency department. So they were willing to have you going from F2 to like an unaccredited registrar. So I think the jump is doable. I personally hadn't worked in emergency before, so I felt like that would not be that appropriate. So I had done HMO for the majority of this year and then just made a move recently, but the job is the exact same. It's just in theory you can work a little bit more unsupervised, but like the supervision is still there. I think I have more questions than that. A lot of people have been asking about CV tips. Again, I think people are trying to recruit you, so I think your CV should just like follow like a clear and well written basic CV format with information about where you worked last, and it's important to have good references to people that you can like rely on to fill in your reference information like promptly, and one from your most recent job, preferably consultants or like general practitioners. I guess if you've done any extra stuff, like if you've done your ALS, if you've done pediatric ALS, if you've done any like teaching or courses, just the usual stuff that boosts your CV. And I think cover letter, like personalizing it. So I'd like written specifically that I was interested in emergency medicine and coming to Melbourne to apply to my current job, and focused on that in my CV for my